All right, good morning again. So before we start, I have one question or two questions and I'm asking you two questions. All right, so someone, could you read this question for me, please?
Which Amerindian group settled in Central America in pre-Columbian times?
Mm-hmm. Read the responses.
A. The Mayas, B. Taínos, C. Cibonis, and D. Kalinagos.
Which one is the answer? Anyone from the class? Which Amerindian
Mayan. Mayan.
Maya settled in the Central America in pre-Columbian times? And the answer is A, the Maya, correct? Now, you are correct because we know for sure that the Mayas settled, some book you say the Mayas, some you say the Mayans, quite,
Excuse me, sir?
go ahead.
Sir, I sent you an email. I don't think it was
You are
yes.
Morrison with the three.
The three. Sir?
When you sent me the email over the holiday,
Yes, sir.
I'll look at the email today.
Yes, sir.
The emails today.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
The settlement of the Mayas, we know that they settled in Central America and they settled in countries like Belize, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, and Mexico. So I clear a picture on the map. If you look at this area, which is in orange or that type of color, that is in square, this is the area that they would have settled on. This area they would have settled, the Mayas. All of this area right here, that if you look at my cursor, they would have settled along this area. All right? So that is where they settled. So we need to know where they would have settled. Now for today's class, what we're going to look at the social, economic, political, religious, and I doubt time will permit us to look at their technological practices. So hopefully we can go through their social, economic, political, and religious practices. Now, before we go into that, I'm going to show you a video on, I'm going to show you a video. You're going to watch a video on the Maya, but you are going to, while watching the video, ladies, you're going to do two things. You're going to observe the Maya settlement, and you're going to you're going to write two sentences describing your observation. So when you are watching the video, write two sentences, observe. So watch, observe, write two sentences describing your observation. And then we will continue from there. All right? 1 second, please. 25. Are you seeing the video?
No, sir.
No,
We're
sir.
slide.
Okay, 1 second. Seeing it now? Are you seeing it now?
Yes, sir.
Hello, I'm O'Neill Hall. I'm reporting from Mexico, Mexico, and we're here in Uxmal, and we're about to climb one of the Mayan pyramids. It's very awesome, man. These are some crazy guys from the conference. Yeah. Yeah. And we're about to go up the pyramids and to see the beauty. Actually, this is awesome, and the yeah, Mexico is a beautiful place. And this one is actually close to Cancun or Merida, I should say Merida. This one is close to Merida in Mexico. There's a lot of what I would say here. It's a lot of cities in Mexico. It's a pretty big place. It's not as small as my little island home of Jamaica or even where I'm now residing or studying in Barbados. Yeah, and we have our little tour guides. Her name is Sharni. Actually, she's my very good friend, and she's doing a very good job. She actually takes us around to the different places to eat like Mexican food and stuff. And this is Tanisha. She's from Jamaica, studying in Barbados also. Yeah. And stuff. Yeah. Anthony's from Canada, from Grenadian roots. And this is also my Jamaican brother here. Hello. Yes. Good morning. Morning. And Shani. Hello. Hola. Tala from Haiti. But he's mixed up. He has a lot of roots. He's a true Caribbean man. All right. Ready? We're ready to go. I'm actually going to videotape it. Well, I'm actually videotaping it already, but yeah. Yeah, I am, but I'm actually videotaping you guys going up. Yeah, so that is, I'm actually bye from now. Bye from Mexico. I'm O'Neill Hall reporting from in Mexico. Adios.
Okay, dokie, ladies. So
Pues nada más simular una
that's
legitimación, pero bueno, pues muchas gracias como siempre, maestro, por su análisis.
no Spanish.
Excelente día.
I'm going to show another video of Uxmal. A better video than my video.
Uxmal was the greatest urban and religious center in the Puc Hills of Yucatan during the late classical period. It flourished between the 7th and 10th century AD. The main ruins of Uxmal cover about 150 acres, though its residential neighborhoods spread beyond that. Uxmal occupies a grassy savanna surrounded by forest. Its buildings were adapted to the varied elevations of the hilly landscape. The real function of many of the surviving structures remains uncertain. They have retained the fanciful names given them by the Spanish. The massive Magician's Pyramid is the tallest structure at Uxmal, also known as the Pyramid of the Dwarf. Both names derive from a legend about a magical dwarf who was hatched from an egg, grew to adulthood in a single day, and built the pyramid in one night. Construction on the pyramid was actually begun in the 6th century AD, and it was regularly expanded through the 10th century. The pyramid is unique among Mayan structures because of its rounded sides, height, and steepness, along with a doorway that can be found near the top of the opposite or west side. Its limestone core was originally covered with smooth plaster and painted red, with accents in blue, yellow, and black. 5 earlier structures lie beneath the Magician's Pyramid. A rich decoration near the top of the pyramid features 12 stylized masks. These were traditionally thought to represent the rain god Chak, but recent scholarship suggests they are actually iconographic mountains, or wits. The graceful elliptical shape and the different angles of inclination of the east and west staircases make the Pyramid of the Magician one of the most unusual in Mesoamerica. Light and shadow sweep around the curvilinear surface, creating different impressions at various times of day. The stone rings of the ball court are situated high upon the 2 walls of the court. One central aspect of Mayan life was the ball game, which filled both a recreational and political role. Mesoamericans played this sport for 3,000 years, making it the longest-lasting sport in human history. Today, the rules of this game are largely unknown, but it is believed that the objective was to use one's stomach and hips to score goals by bouncing a rubber ball through a vertical hoop located at the opposite side of the ball court. By the end of the Classic period, sacrifice had become a brutal aspect of the game, with the members of the losing team faced with the prospect of decapitation. The nunnery quadrangle was given its name by the 16th century Spanish historian Fray Diego López de Cogollado because it reminded him of a Spanish convent. The space above each doorway in the archway to the south of the nunnery quadrangle features the motif of a Maya cottage or na, a type of dwelling that can be found throughout the Yucatan to this day. The buildings of the nunnery quadrangle were constructed at different times. First the northern, then the southern, eastern, and western buildings. The western building has the most richly decorated facade, featuring intertwined stone snakes and numerous masks of the hook-nosed rain god Chak.
All right, ladies, so you're going to take 2 minutes to write your, where is it? You're going to take 2 minutes to write your description on the videos that you have just seen. 2 minutes. So the videos that you have just watched, observe the Maya settlement and write 2 sentences describing your observation. All right. Anyone want to share their description? Their 2 sentences?
Sir, can I share?
Go ahead, Marson.
Sir, I wrote the Mayas had like a tower called a Uxmal, and it would cover over 150 acres.
Mm-hmm.
Sir, would it have to be about the Uxmal we're talking about? Because like what I also wrote as the second sentence is that it had that you mentioned that there's a lot of cities in Mexico, and that could be like a part of the Maya's influence why there's so much cities in Mexico.
Yes, you are very correct. Anyone else?
Sir, I wrote that on the top of the pyramid, is it a pyramid? There were masks representing their gods.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think on the side of the pyramid, there was a vertical hoop.
Didn't they look like it's the very last part?
Yeah, there's a vertical hoop that which they would play like a ball game.
Yes.
A ball game. And losers were tend to be sacrificed, decapitated.
Yes. Interesting ball game. That was a serious ball game. Trust me, ladies, if you had, once COVID is through, I know Mexico is a thing now, you should try and get a visit try to visit Mexico. And even if you don't see Mexico, but also Belize, because when I also went to Belize, I saw the pyramids from a distance. I never had the money to go on the trip. So I saw it from a distance. However, when I went to Mexico, I said to myself, I had to go to see one of the Mayan pyramid, because there's no way I can go Central America and not see it. And it was something to behold. The artistic work of the Mayans, it is just unbelievable that people who would have lived all that period, or artistic, and how their engineering skills were so good. Because look, hurricane and all these different type of stuff come, and those pyramids and their buildings and stuff are still up today. Had it not been for the Spanish who went in and destroyed some of them, then we would have had a perfect representation, just like Uxmal, where you have almost a perfect representation of an entire Mayan society, the buildings and everything. Same thing in parts of Central America, you're going to find similar things like that. And so look at it. We have some rain that it rained the other day, and the new roads that were built, all the roads went. But those Mayans, they built all of these great civilizations, great pyramids, and they are still standing today. I have to tell you that their work were very, very good construction. So the ladies, we know, so that is one, that my observation from what I've seen there is that their buildings are just, their construction, our architecture is just great. And also the carvings, their writings, and all of these different stuff on their walls are something to behold. Now, traveling to this part of Mexico, Uxmal, and our focus is really on Belize, right? But even in Belize, I can't remember the name of the Mayan, the settlement there that I've seen in Belize, is that they would have settled in very, very hostile terrain. The land seems very dry. It seems like almost like a desert, right? So for example, when you're there, it was very hot. Like the heat was unbearable. And the surrounding lands, especially when I was flying across when I flew from Flores, Guatemala into Belize, the entire landscape seems quite swampy. So the land had quite a lot of crack on it when you're looking down from the sky, down at where the Mayans used to settle. So the land, it seems as if the land was extremely swampy. Also, it was quite forested in some parts. And if the land is swampy and forested, then guess what? They are going to have problem when it comes to agriculture. So they will have to navigate those settlement issues. So that is to describe their settlement. Now, if we're going to look at their political organization, so all of these little dots here that you see on my map, so from El Salvador, Honduras, Belize, Guatemala, Mexico, all of this area in Central America, they would have settled. And I'm looking for Uxmal, where I went. Uxmal is, I'm not seeing it on the map anyway. But Uxmal is somewhere along this area right here. All right? Should be along this area. So they have several different city-states in the Mayan settlement. So they settled various places in Central America. Each settlement was called a city-state. So each of these little dots were city-states. City-states were politically independent of each other. So they were quite independent of each other, and each city-state had their own leaders. Another thing we need to know about their city-states, ladies, is that each of the city-states, they traded with each other. So for example, I could have been a Mayan living here in this city-state, and I could have traded with a Mayan here. Or I could be a Mayan living right here, and I could have had warfare with a Mayan state here, right? So we need to understand. So when we're looking at the Mayans, we're not thinking of them as being homogeneous, as in just one group. There were several different groups, and they settled all over, just like the Tainos. You didn't have one cacique, or you didn't have one leader for the Kalinagos. Each settlement had their own leaders, just like the Mayans. Now, for the Mayans, maybe you're thinking about that the Mayans had what we call now, the population was small. No, the population for each city-state was not small. We're talking about millions of people living in a city-state, maybe about 2 to 3 million people living in a city-state alone. So we're talking about a very huge civilization. The civilization was very, very big. All right.
So, sir, city-states were like the size of like Jamaica?
Yes. City-states were very big. Look at, for example, the population of the Taino population of Haiti, which is the island of Hispaniola, was 3 million. 3 million Tainos lived there when the Spaniards came. And so for the city-states alone, if you study deep history on the Mayan groups, it was millions of people who would have lived here. One city-state had almost 2 to 3 million people. It was very, very, very big. A lot of activity was taking place in the city-states. All right. And that was something I didn't know, is when I went to Mexico and I did the tour, and the tour guide, told me about the different city-states and all of these different stuff. I said, wow, I had no idea that all of these people would have lived. It was like an entire city like today. All right, so the political leader, so each city-state had one leader, right? A main leader who was an absolute ruler, who we call, if you want to say that he was the king, you could say that. The name was Alak Unik, or what they call the true man or the real man. Now, his position was hereditary. All right, so it was blood. He was also seen as a god. So in their religion or their political system, well, in their religion, he was seen as a god, and he was also a priest. So he was able to communicate to our God. And everyone believed that the Alak Uni was ordained by God. So if we want to say that they had a theocracy is the belief that God gave you the power to rule, then we could say that, right? Now, so we know for sure that at the helm of the society, the political society, was the Alak Unik. Next, the Alak Unik had various functions, quite a lot of functions. He had religious, and remember, we are talking about each city-state. So each city-state had its own Alak Unik. There are several different Alak Unik all across the Central American region, right? So they had for each of their Alak Unik, they had religious, civil, and military duties. What were some of their duties? They formulated policies. So they determine how you should relate to each of the various city-states, the other city-states that were around. So if I was in Uxmal, I determine how Uxmal should relate to Tekal, right? Which could be another city-state. They were the ones who made the laws, they presided over the ceremonies, they delegated duties to the Bathtubs, right? Who were responsible for for villages in each city-state. So for each city-state, they had several villages, because there's nowhere, ladies, that you're going to have an entire city-state and the Alak Unik is going to control over 3 million people, 2 to 3 million people. So each of the city-states are going to divide it into villages, and who is going to be in charge of the villages is the Bathtubs. All right? So these were some of the political duties of the Alak Unik. They made the laws, they presided over ceremonies, they communicated with gods, they delegated duties. Right? Now the Bathtubs, as I said before, they were like lesser chiefs. They were chosen by nobles. They were not hereditary, meaning they were not blood, not blood-related leadership, were passed down through bloodline. And what they did was that in each of their villages that they would have been in charge of, they enforced the rules and the laws. Now, two historians, Brown and Carter, they said in their book that they were also a war leader. So for each of the city-states, they had their own Bathtubs, right? Under the Bathtubs were the Nakoms, and these were like the war chief, who we consider things like the persons who were the military, and they were highly tattooed according to historians, and they held offices for 3 years. So for 3 years they held offices for, and because they know that they were war chief, they were not allowed to drink alcohol during their period of office. And they were in charge of training of the soldiers. So they were like the soldiers of the civilization. All right. So just a clear picture. So you have this wouldn't give you one. So these are some of their political organization. Where am I? Here? Good. So that is their political organization. So they had 3 groups. of political leaders are the Alak Unik, the Bathtubs, and the Nakoms, right? So we know that the Alak Unik was hereditary, meaning that that person was believed that it was chosen by God. So I have my son, I'm an Alak Unik. I pass down my leadership to my son, right? It is always a son that it's passed down to. Or in other words, you have an Alak Unik. I am going to consult with another group. So I will have my council that I meet with, which is, and that council is made up of the Bathtubs. The Bathtubs are the lesser chiefs. The lesser chiefs, they met. They were in charge of the different villages within the city-states. So the city-states were made up of several different villages, and they were in charge of that. And the Nakoms were the military personnel there who were so military personnel were all over the city-state, and they were very much involved in defending the city-state, ensure that the city-state was always protected. Just like, if we look here, we know for sure on the map that there would have been quite a lot of conflicts between city-states, Mayan fighting against Mayan. I could also take somebody from this city-state and also enslave persons from another city-state, right? What were their religious practices like? Their religious practices, they were polytheistic. They had 166 gods. And then, as I mentioned before, that the Alak Unik was seen as a god, maybe because of his absolute rule, meaning that he was ordained by God to rule. And they had several different gods, just like the Tainos and the Kalinagos. They had God of wind, God of rain, as they mentioned in the video, which is Chak, the God of rain, and one God of the corn, or the corn god. They had quite a lot of gods. Now, they also did sacrifice, in which they would have sacrificed human slaves, human beings. They sacrifice human beings to their gods. And so when they capture other people from other city-states, they captured them during war, and those persons were enslaved from the other city-states. And what they did was that they offered them as sacrifice to their gods. Now, in the sacrifice, what they are going to do in the sacrifice is that they're going to remove the heart. So they're going to remove the heart from their bodies, right? When they are doing the sacrifice. Now, so one, we know that they are polytheistic. We know that they also did sacrifice. No, Yannick, I don't know the movie. You can share it, search for it and share it, send it to me. That movie, all right? So for we know they are polytheistic. They had several different gods, 166 gods. They also did sacrifice, and also their high priest was Akin, which actually means the Lord serpent. Now, what was the role of the Akin? The Akin determined the dates for festivals. They calculated the sacred calendar. They prescribed herbal medicine. They were into fortune telling, They believe in spells, that people could cast spells. So they believe in casting off spells. And they also had a lot of temples in the various city-states. And so what they're going to do is that they are going to serve in the temples, the king, the priests. All right? Another, so that covers their religious aspect of their society. Another part of their society is what we call social, in which, if we look here on, we have, well, I'm going to show you this, is that their society was very classes, divided in class. You have the Alakuni at the top, you have the Bathtubs, the priests, those were the Akins, the Pulms, which were the merchants, and also the peasants. So they had very rigid class lines in these societies. Just like today, in our society today, we have class, we have uptown, downtown, middletown, all different type of towns, people from different social groups. Or if you want to use maybe prime minister, member of parliament, governor general, voters, people, the citizens, they also had rigid class lines. Now, if you look on a different map over here, you'll see a different social structure where some historians argue that the Alakuni was at the top, the priests and the nobles. So the nobles would include people like the Bathtubs and the Nacoms. They would be right here. And then you have the merchants and the artisans, then the peasants, and then the slaves. So the slaves were persons who were captured from other city-states. They were at the base of the society. So that was their social organization. All right? Gender roles. In this society, women played a very subservient role, meaning they were beneath the male. They were not allowed to drink at functions. So when they go to function, they could not drink. They could not hold public offices. Which one of the groups allowed females to hold public offices, to be leaders?
Kalinagos.
The Kalinagos. The Kalinagos allow females to be leaders, but they repeat, you said Kalinagos?
No, sir, that's not right.
It's not correct. Which one is it?
The Tainos.
The Tainos. The Tainos allowed females to be leaders. But for the Kalinagos and the Mayans, they didn't allow females to be leaders in their society. All right? Yes, Yanni, that is the name of the movie. That movie describes the Mayan settlement. It's about the Mayans. You're correct. So we know for sure that women were not allowed to add very separate roles from the males within the societies. So the main domain of the female in Mayan societies was that their purpose was in the home, domestic. So they take care of the children, the weave, they paint, the pottery, all of these different stuff is what they would have done. So those were some of the roles of the females, their social practices, right? For their recreation, they had a ball game as you were told and in the video, and it was described. So it was puck, attack. So that was the name of the ball game. And we know for sure in the name of the ball game, you see that little circle that they had. If you lose or during the game, you know for sure that you could die. I wouldn't play that game. If I was living in that society, I wouldn't play that game. Anybody would play that game? We like to take risks. Anyone?
Sir, I like to take risks, but not that kind of risk.
All right. So we know for sure that their recreation, they had that ball game that they played. Also, ladies, they had their housing, not like the Taino and the Kalinago houses that were made from, you know, from the thatch palm and the cotton and stones and all of these different stuff. Their huts were built very sturdy, or much sturdier than those groups. And how do you know the difference? So they use clay and stones for their huts. And the chief's house or the priest's house, they had quite a lot of paintings. In addition, ladies, the schools that they had, the schools, only the nobles attended schools, so they had schools, very sophisticated society, and the children were trained in the writing, painting, warfare, astronomy, mathematics, religion, and architecture. So they had their school in their society. Schooling was very important in their society. Also, so that covers their social aspect of their society. In terms of their economy, they were very much similar to the Tainos and the Kalinagos in terms of what they would have planted. So they planted things like avocado, beans, peas, pumpkins, cocoa, potato, papaya, sapodilla is what we call sweet sop, sour sop. They hunt for deer, agouti. The best thing I like about the Mayan society was that they had turkey that they ate, right? Ducks, rabbits. Some of you said that you have had rabbits before. They were gatherers and they were fishers. So we know for sure that they planted. Now, ladies, one of the things is that for their society is that they had to implement some agricultural techniques because of the infertile area in which they would have settled. The land were very dry and some of the land were very mountainous. So what they did was that they had terrace farming in which they planted on the hills or the mountainside. In addition, they would have reclaimed quite a lot of the lands, reclaimed the lands, the swamp, drain the water from the swamp in order to plant their food. And also, they did irrigation. So irrigation is when you move water from one area to water your vegetation. And so they created artificial dams to catch the water, and then they channel those waters through canals into the dry areas where they would have planted. They had a well that was called the cenotes, and they also did like slash and burn, which we know what slash and burn is because we would have looked at slash and burn when we look at the Tainos and the Kalinagos. So that was their economy, or their economy was. Now, ladies, they traded, and they traded between city-states. So they traded food, jewelry, precious metals, slaves, rubber, pottery, flint, salt. They traded almost every and anything, right? And one of their forms of money that they used was cocoa beans. Cocoa beans was one of the money that they were used. And we know that the Pums were the traders within the society. So where they traded along the paved road. So in these societies, they had very nice paved roads. They also had few rivers because those areas had very few rivers, and they traded along the rivers, and they also traded along the sea. So those were the areas that they would have settled. So the society very sophisticated because we know for sure that they were traders, and we know that they used cocoa beans as a form of money. They traded along the paved roads. They had cities. They also built towns within the cities that they traded, like how we have market today. They had towns that other people from other city states could visit where they could trade goods. All right. So that was their economy. We know that. So we know for sure that they did agriculture. They had various agricultural techniques that they would have used. Their social life. They had various gender roles, class structure, and all of these different stuff. All right, ladies, our time has expired. We will continue on Monday. Any question? Or any comment? Any comment, ladies? All right, no comment. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, sir. Bye, sir.
Bye,
Bye,
bye.
sir. Bye, sir.
Bye, bye.
Bye, sir.